Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be with you. And thanks so much to Flippa for hosting this really exciting and inspiring gathering. So, I'm going to talk about my experience writing the mechanical bowl of startup land. I call it Mechanical Bowl. I call it Mechanical Bull because it's a wild ride. I mean, you really got to hold on until that startup bucks you. And it's a different ride, for men and for women. For men, people are watching their stamina, their strategy, their strength. For women, they're looking at the jiggling body parts. So, the startup experience is a little different often for women. But first, many thanks to Manuela for that kind introduction. I'm very proud to be the CEO of the Impact Seat Foundation. Our goal is to create a world in which women, especially women of color, can succeed as business leaders. We're doing that through something we call full stack philanthropy, which encompasses impact investing, grant making, and advocacy. You already heard a little bit about me, and here's how you can find me. You can see that in the bottom left-hand corner. I'm also on LinkedIn. Look, this is me back in college. A friend recently sent this to me. Yes, that was my nickname for a while, Iced Tea. And look, I think I'm proof that you can be a terrible coder and still have a very successful career in technology. Right, but it's not easy. TV just turned itself right on. Magic. If you'd like to read my book, I definitely would encourage that. I'm going to talk a little more about some of the themes there because I wrote the book because as I was out there on panels like this, talking to people, I realized that not everyone is lucky as you listening in right now, to be able to sit down with me. So the book is a way to reach even more people because there's so many great ideas out there. And you should be able, no matter who you are, if you have an idea that can change the world and improve people's lives and maybe make a little bit of money, there should be a place for you. But if you want the TLDR version, here's the Harvard Business Review article I wrote. So just a little bit about Attentively. Attentively is a product that we developed, my business partner and I, as we were working with our clients at our digital agency. We worked mainly with causes, nonprofits, foundations, et cetera. And we could see that even though we had a foot in the tech world, we could see that corporate marketers were using, some really advanced tools, whereas causes were starting to fall behind in their sophistication. So, we, took the technology, we remixed it to make it more easier for nonprofits to use it for causes and tailored it to their needs, put it at a price point that they could afford. And this mix of social marketing automation, influencer engagement, and social listening was something that a lot of organizations really found exciting. So here's our team. We were never huge. We tried to stay small, nimble, but mighty. And you might see something here, a pattern. We tried hard to create a, a place in which technologists who happen to be women could find a safe place to express themselves, to contribute to the evolving innovation that's out there. So you can see we had a pretty chick-tastic team, very unusual for your average startup. And that got us a lot of attention. Even though we were relatively small in terms of size of people, you can see we got an awful lot of coverage. People were really watching what we were doing. We were relatively early at the time. We're talking around the year 2010, 2011, when there were very, very few Black women. I think I was maybe the third or fourth, somewhere, certainly in the top the first 5 Black women to raise more than $1 million in venture capital. So we had a lot of eyes on us, which added certainly to the pressure that we face. But what had happened was, and this is true of all startups, not just startups that are launched by women, not just startups that are launched by women of color. And by the way, here's a factoid a lot of people don't know. Black women are actually launching small businesses at the highest rate of any demographic in the United States, and yet they are the most undercapitalized, which does not make any sense. From just a pure logic and economic standpoint, this is irrational, right? So, but no matter what, no matter who you are, as you're launching your startup, I think it's very common to see yourself, on this track to success. Like, hey, we've got an idea, we see our market, we see a solution, and, we've got our eyes on the prize. However, as you can see on the bottom, I think most startup founders will, tell you, look, the struggle was very real. One day, you're at the front of the Titanic saying, I'm going to be the king and queen of the world, and the next day you think to yourself, well, it was a fun ride. The Titanic is sinking. It's all over. So, you really have to have a lot of tenacity and strength, and, no one's going to believe in you more than you are going to believe in you. And I think that's, one of the lessons that I learned. But here are a few more things that I'd like to talk about that I learned, from my experience as, the first Black female tech startup founder to get her startup all the way through the life cycle. And I've since actually helped, been a senior advisor to Hustle, which was is a mobile platform that's focused on getting out the vote, among other things, working with causes and corporations. I helped them achieve a good exit. We also, my team at what was then Fission Strategy, created the original source code, some of the original source code for CrowdTangle, which was later acquired in 2019 by Facebook, which is now Meta. And I also advised and participated in that exit as well. So, you're talking to someone who, has seen things, have done things. And, the book, Mechanical Bull, I wrote it with that life cycle in mind. A lot of people don't realize that the average life cycle of a tech startup or really any startup these days is about 5 to 10 years. This isn't necessarily something you're going to do your entire life. So going in, understanding that there's a life cycle here that you're going to enter, and that there's a lot of different ways that you're going to exit, but you're almost certainly going to exit. Something like 90% of startups in America fail in their first year. And of those that go on, most of those go on to some form of acquisition. There's about 4 different types of acquisitions that I've seen, which is acqui-hire, or what I call maintaining your dignity. And hey, there's no price on dignity. And after that, it's new car, new house, don't have to work again for the rest of your life. And most exits are going to fall, in those first 3. There are people who make it really, really big. And then there are the tiny, tiny fraction, 1% or so of startups or less that go on to that big IPO. But first off, you want to ask yourself, are you even an entrepreneur? Right? It sounds glamorous, right? Be your own boss, right? Work from home, although post-COVID, a lot of us are working from home, but look, what I tell people is, imagine instead of having 1 or 2 bosses, you have thousands, okay, millions of bosses. Those are your customers and clients, right? And then imagine, yes, you're working from home, but that work from home lifestyle is because often you can't afford an office, and you're still in your pajamas because you haven't stopped working for 18 hours. So if that is appealing to you, by all means, launch in. I mean, those first 12 to 18 months of launching your business are going to be very, very intense. Of course, you want to make sure you have a really great idea. And the best ideas, come from, what you're seeing in your daily life or your daily work. What is a problem that you see, and what's a solution that you think you can bring to the table? And don't assume that someone has already fixed this problem. Chances are maybe someone is addressing the problem, but they might not have that secret sauce that you can bring. You want to bring together your team. I think women in particular, but also BIPOC people often, you've had to work so hard to get to where you are that you see yourself as an army of one. And no investor is going to look at it that way. Investors actually do prize diversity of speciality, right? So they're looking for the person who is the visionary, right? Who's got those big ideas and can really talk in a dynamic way. Who's your sales and marketing lead? Who is your tech lead? If you're building if you're building something, who's knows something about manufacturing and that process? Who's your product lead? And then who's your gray-haired advisor? Someone who's, behind the scenes, helping, and has been through, something like this and is helping you to achieve. Any investor, even at the angel, level, at the seed level, is going to be asking themselves, does this person understand that they can't do it alone, right? That it's going to take a team. You don't have to have all of those people to start. That's fine. That's pretty normal. That's something actually oftentimes your network or your angels can help you with. But you do have to understand who you are, which of those archetypal roles are you, and where are you going to find the other roles. Then you have to decide, am I bootstrapping? Am I funding? Am I getting funding? We bootstrapped attentively internally at Vision Strategy for 18 months. Before we realized, look, we can't just continue using spare developer time on this. If it's really going to succeed, it needs to be its own thing, have its own dedicated team. And that's when we started to seek out funding. And let me tell you, back then, right now there's, certainly a lot more energy than there was being put into diverse founders. But at the time, I was relatively unique, and I was used to, getting my phone calls answered. I was used to getting my emails replied to. And, it was like crawling on my belly on glass. I mean, I literally sat in a meeting with a VC whose job it was to invest in people like me. And literally, he, after I gave him a demo of the software, and to be clear, I already had a multi-million-dollar revenue business. I already had, some micro celebrity through, many of my TV appearances and mainstream media appearances, and we had customers. We had a working prototype, and we had customers actually using the platform. He looked at me and he said, Cheryl, I can see how this is important software and that this probably has a market, but I don't know if you are the person who can actually, make this happen. Which, yeah, I mean, just the straight up racism, that I experienced was unlike anything I'd seen in my career. And, one thing that you should know, I'm a senior advisor over at Astia, which is one of the oldest angel networks that focuses on female founders. And they crunched a lot of data in a project they call Astia Edge. And Astia Edge showed that it takes them on average 7 introductions to funders to get a white female startup founder funded. It takes them on average 50 in order to get a Black female funder, a Black female startup founder funded. 50. So almost 10x. That's what America's asking Black women to do, is do 10x the amount of work to get, a less funding. So, and when they told me that, when I heard that in the study, I said, yeah, I kind of intuitively figured that out, that it was just going to be a numbers game, and I was going to have to knock on a lot more doors, than many of my peers who look different from me. And it's worth it. What I will tell you is, yes, you might have to talk to a lot more people and work a little harder for that funding. But, when I ended up sitting on a park bench for 2 hours, with the person, Josh Mailman, who would be, our first lead funder, it was really exciting. And, we were off to the races. You will find, particularly now, I think it's much easier. People are raising more money. It takes less time. But it's worth persevering to find those funders who believe in you. Then, of course, you want to launch your minimum viable product. You need to make sure you're managing your burn. Once you get that funding, every day is $1 spent. So make decisions as quickly as you can. I tell people, synthesize as much data as you can. You're probably only going to get 70% of what you need. And then absolutely make sure that you review that decision, evaluate it within 6 to 8 weeks, make another decision. There's a good likelihood that you're going to pivot. The book Lean Startup is, I think, the book that really crystallized that concept, wherein you'll get your startup rolling, and at some point you'll figure out, oh, I thought this was what the customers needed, that the clients, or this, I thought this was how the tech would work. This is what I actually need to do. Here's how people are responding in the marketplace. And you'll find, that pivot point, and don't be afraid to pivot. That's where you start to unlock that hockey stick of success. Growth, scale, traction is something I spend a lot of time in the book talking about. At every stage of your company, when you have 2 employees, when you have 10 employees, 25, 50, 100, it's almost a different business. Social research has found at each of those inflection points as you add more people. And look, startups are hard. No matter who you are, you're going to work, the hardest maybe you ever have in your life. And it's going to be real stressful. However, there are speed bumps, that you're going to encounter, if you don't look like Mark Zuckerberg. And, every chapter of my book at the end has, a little like, hey, if you look different, here's how this might be different for you. And here's how I got through it. And then there's also an investor insight of, hey, are you an investor who's reading this book and you want to help, make sure there are, more people are able to, enter the entrepreneurial space. Here's how you can help in this moment. And then finally, exit. You want to be thinking about your exit from the moment you start your business. Why? Because it's all about relationships. The people who are going to buy your company, if you get acquired, which is, again, the most likely scenario if you're successful, are people who are going to know you and have been watching you. So, the integrations, the partnerships, the types of marketing that you do, that's going to make a big difference in how you exit. So as I said, look, it's different when you look different, and the ride on that mechanical bull might be, a little different for the person on the left than the person on the right. And I definitely think that, if you're a person on the left, you need to know that and prepare for that. For example, the conventional wisdom is that it takes 6 to 12 months to close a funding round. If you're the person on the left, it might take you closer to 12 months, and that has a direct implication on how you spend your runway. If you're the person on the right, know that, even though you're working hard, I don't want to diminish, the work of white men in the startup space. I know it's hard for everybody, but imagine it being literally 10 times harder. Okay, that's what the person on your right, on your left is facing. So what can you do in your world to start to break down those barriers and erase those differences and make sure that really hardworking, talented people with great ideas are getting the capital and the success that they need? Some more things I know for sure: ride or die or plan to keep trying. You want the people who join your early team, not only are founding the DNA, of your business, those people are going to know you better than even some of the closest people in your life. It's a very intimate relationship. And look, if someone isn't pulling their weight, or is dragging you down, make sure you correct that, because it won't get better. It will only get worse. What I can tell you is, look, we are absolutely going through a time of seismic civilizational transformation. And even though that is scary for a lot of us, and can be painful and traumatic, it also is unleashing all new types of opportunities. So, I certainly recommend, that you stay alert to, the ways in which people have gotten so much better at using the internet to consume goods and services due to necessity, and be sensitive to those global shifts in how we live our lives, because that's where you're going to have your success. Look, I joined and helped to launch the Impact Seat Foundation because I believe that when women are CEOs, we can make a really big difference in how this world works. This groundbreaking venture capital and philanthropic fund was founded by Barbara Clark, my co-founder. She is one of the most prolific, maybe the single largest individual investor in women-led tech startups. And we believe that when we democratize access to capital and put women in positions of power in partnership with men, that we can solve big problems faster. We can get better outcomes. When incredible ideas, fantastic founders, and cutting-edge companies get the resources they need to succeed, with a team that takes full advantage of the diversity of human experience, we can build a better future together. We believe in the value of diversity and inclusion to drive our collective future. And look, all of the studies show that diverse-led teams are actually more innovative, they are more productive, and they are more profitable. If your only desire is to make the most money possible, you want to make sure that that C-suite actually looks diverse, because they're more likely to have a better exit, for example, and to have better profits. They're more likely to have a stronger multiple. So Lisa Fruitshire of the Portfolio Enterprise Fund, in which the Impact Seat has investments, eloquently put it this way: impact investing is one of the many tools that's needed to address the complex social and environmental problems that we face. Harnessing capital markets can have a huge societal benefit that will help change happen so much faster and at scale, rather than waiting on philanthropic and government solutions alone. And I think all of us here today understand that and believe that, right? That we're in a moment when innovation really is changing the society that we're living in, and that we're living through a socio-technical revolution. And I believe that government, schools, companies have to incorporate new principles like JEDI, justice, ecocentrism, decolonization, and innovation in order to be successful in the 21st century. Look, I'm going to close by saying that you can do this. There is more power in your cell phone than put people on the moon. And yet more people have been to the moon than have done what I've done. When I exited my company and had that acquisition, a friend of mine sat me down and said, look, Cheryl, 17 Americans have been to the moon. Okay. More Americans have been to the moon than have done what you have done. And you have an obligation to help others come behind you. And that's true of everybody here listening today. You have the power to create the change that you want to see in the world. It's a cliche, but I'm a living, breathing example of what's possible when the odds are stacked against you and no one has attempted to do what you've done. Right now, we're all traumatized. We're living through en masse loss, grief, terror, pain. We are all reinventing. We can unlock new ways to learn, love, live, connect with each other if we're open to reimagining our future together. I believe in you, and I also choose to believe in me. So I'm going to wrap up and say, look, how are you fueling real-time innovation across these many fronts, whether it's through your work or through investment? So thank you. It's been a pleasure